Hello, boys and girls, and welcome to the concession stand here on the KB Radio Network. I am your host, Kevin Reed, and this is the review of the new space opera directed by Zack Snyder, part 2 of his epic space adventure, Rebel Moon Part 2, The Scargiver, being brought to us by our good friends over there at Netflix. This is, like I said, the second part of this. I don't know if it's a trilogy or whatever. I don't know. And the way this film left off, I'm assuming there's more to come. But part 1 came out, what, 3-4 months ago? I think in December. So yeah, about 4 months ago. And it was a lot of fanfare behind it. A lot of money being pushed behind it as far as marketing and promoting it and trailers and whatnot. This was Zack Snyder's take on quote unquote Star Wars. You know, this is the story that he pitched to Disney and Lucasfilm to do a Star Wars film. And so this was his version of a Star Wars story. And I was all for that at the time because we needed something different. It was enough about the Skywalker legacy that we've seen. We'd have milked that cow to death. We just seen enough about Darth Vader. We just, you know, it was time for something fresh. So when Disney passed on it, I was like, man, just trying to do something different and new. Yeah. Why would you pass on that? Well, I see why. I see why now. Yeah, the movie came out, part 1 came out, and it's no secret I enjoyed part 1. I thought part 1 was all right, but I was ultimately let down by part 1. I thought it was going to be better than what it was. And I knew going in that it was going to be more style than substance because it's Zack Snyder. Yeah, so, you're not going to get much story out of it. Even when you have a ready-made story, a la Batman v Superman and so on and so forth. But he's more focused on the style of filmmaking than the actual story and actual character development and things of that nature. So I went into this knowing that after viewing part 1. And so when part 2 came along, or when they announced it, that it was coming out this weekend, there was zero fanfare for this film. Actually, I had forgot that it was even coming out. I forgot all about this movie. I mean, it was no promotion behind it. And I think that was because of the reception of part 1. Not too many people championed part 1. There you had your Snyder heads who were all in on it, and I get it. But for the most part, I don't even think Snyder heads can defend that movie. I mean, like I said, it was decent, but it let me down. It was boring. But I will say this, after watching part 2, The Scargiver, I appreciate part 1. Rebel Moon Part 2, The Scargiver, was not good. This movie was not good at all. Returning in this film, you had Sophia Bartella, German Hensu, Ed Sheeran, Michael Huseman, and Anthony Hopkins reprising their roles from part 1. And the plot for this particular entry into the Rebel Moon saga, Kara and the surviving warriors prepare to fight and defend their new homeworld against the mother world led by Noble. Where do I start with this movie? I mean, where do I begin with this review? It picks up exactly where we left off at part 1. Okay, I appreciate that. That's cool. It's a true part 1, or a true part 2, I should say. And we're off to the races. I really thought that we got a lot of the story in part 1, and that way in part 2, we'll have a lot more action. That wasn't the case. There was more action in part 1, The Child of Fire, than it was in this one. There wasn't that much action. That being said, the final 45 minutes of this film is like one long action scene, and so I know it's coming off as a crazy statement, but that's basically all the action wrapped up in that section of the film. It was not interesting. This movie is the most derivative movie I have ever seen in my life. This was so Seventh Samurai and Magnificent Seven, which is pretty much the same movie. They're the same movie. Magnificent Seven is a remake of the Seven Samurai, but this was a remake of all of that. It was the same plot. I mean, almost verbatim. Now, don't get me wrong. The first one was too. The first one had shades of the Seven Samurai and so on and so forth, and Star Wars, of course. And that's fine. That's fine. You know, because it was more of an homage in part one. In part two, it was straight up the Seventh Samurai. And straight up, it was one scene in this film, and this is non-spoil. I'm not going to spoil it, but there was a scene in this film that was ripped right from the Seventh Samurai. It was the exact same scene. And I'm sitting there like, what am I watching here? It's nothing new. It was nothing new brought to the table. And it was so frustrating to see. And because I gave Zack Snyder more credit than this. Now, do I think Zack Snyder is the best storyteller in Hollywood? No, by no stretch of the imagination. Do I believe that? And if you ask Zack Snyder's mom, she'll tell you that he's not. You know, he's not the best storyteller. But I was expecting more, and it didn't happen. Now, at the end of this film, I kind of know why the movie is set up the way it is, and we're going to get to that in a few. But it's like, man, you wasted an opportunity here. This was a waste. This really was a waste. This is the first film that I've watched. Well, not the first film, but this is the film that I've watched, and I got this feeling for the first time in a long time, I should say, that all the acting was bad. All the acting, I mean, across the board, was bad. And these are good actors and actresses. So I'm not giving them 100%. They do get a percentage, a high percentage, mind you, but they don't get the full blunt of it. It was really the material they were working with and the story they were telling. It was really nothing they could bring to it, but the acting was so bad, man, across the board. You had one good performance in this movie, and I mean really good performance, and that's as far as I could take it. Good, really good. Great, no. Excellent, no. But it stood out amongst the others, and that was the great Anthony Hopkins as the voice of Jimmy. You know, this cyborg or whatever it is, android, excuse me, whatever it was. The character is dumb and pointless, I felt, but it was there. And the voice work here was top notch. I mean, it's Anthony Hopkins. You know, it's rare that he looks bad. It's rare. And I can only think of one movie Anthony Hopkins looked bad, and that was Bad Company. You remember that action film? You probably don't, because nobody watched it. But that it was an action film with him and Chris Rock. I think it came out like in 2000, 2001 or something. But it was horrible. The movie was horrible, and he was bad in it. And you could tell throughout that whole film, he did not want to be in that movie. I mean, it just radiated off of him. But anyway, that was the only time I can say Anthony Hopkins was bad. He wasn't bad in this. He was, I mean, I guess it's the power of his voice, the way he talks, and it added some gravitas to that character. And so I appreciated that. All the human characters, everybody else in this film was not good. I'm sorry. They were not good. I may make one exception. One. And that is to the actress who played Nemesis. Oh my God, what's her name? Anyway, the character of Nemesis, the actress, she did good. I liked her. I did like her. But that's it. That's the only one. If you twisted my arm and said who did good, Anthony Hopkins and Donna Bay. That's it. Nobody else did good. And that's rare. You're not gonna find that anywhere else. Going back to our good friend and brother, Zack Snyder. Zack Snyder, who I'm a huge fan of. I mean, going back to Dawn of the Dead, going back to 300, all those movies, even uh, Man of Steel, I feel is one of the best comic book movies ever made. You There are elements of Batman v Superman: Dawn of Justice that are just amazing. The whole movie itself. Okay, we're not going to talk about that, but there are parts in that movie where you can sit back and say, "Man, this is cool. This is cool. I've never seen anything like this." His version of Justice League was good. I enjoyed Army of the Dead. I mean, in my humble opinion, that's his best work. I loved Army of the Dead. Oh man, I don't know what happened here. I don't know what happened here because not only did he direct this film, he co-wrote this film. It's just so bad. Now he is Zack Snyder, and like every film, it is beautifully shot. Like I said, style over substance. The style always wins with Zack. The style is beautiful. I mean, the visual effects were outstanding. All that worked. All that worked. But the story, the pacing of this film didn't work. This movie was 2 hours and 5 minutes long, I think. 2 hours and 3 minutes, whatever. It was 45 minutes too long. This movie was way too long for no reason. We all know Zack Snyder loves his slow motion. I like slow motion too when it's used properly. Half of these 2 hours, and I'm saying an hour, I'm giving it an hour. An hour of this film was slow motion. If you actually speed it up, it's probably a 45-minute movie. That's the only thing I could think of. They slowed up certain scenes to stretch it out to actually make a movie. Honest to God, it was that bad. I mean, we got slow motion shots of the farmers farming the grain. I'm like, this is senseless. This makes no sense. What drama are you trying to get out of this? What because slow motion, you're supposed to take your time. That's the point of it being used in film. Take your time and soak in this shot, soak in this scene, so your mind can catch up to it, of the excitement, of the joy that's taking place in front of you. Why did I have to watch a 20-minute scene of farmers shucking wheat, man? I mean, I didn't understand the point of that. I did not get that. I didn't understand the climax of this movie, at least the climactic battle in this film. It made no sense. An offer was made. Sacrifice yourself, or surrender yourself, I should say, and the people in this village will live. If not, they all die. They chose not to make the sacrifice or the surrender, and people still died anyway. I mean, what was the point? And what made it so bad, you still ended up on the ship. Maybe you should have just surrendered and executed the plan from there. That it made no sense. It was so frustrating to watch people die that didn't have to die. Now, granted, it was set up earlier, and I know people who watched the movie and probably saw the scene and like, oh, Cameron, you didn't pay attention to me. I paid attention, unfortunately. Yeah, I paid attention. Yes, there was a scene that set up that they would say they would leave the people alone, and they still end up doing it anyway. I know that. I'm not stupid. They're bad guys. They're villains. We know that. But you still would have had a better chance had you not chose to fight right then. It was just dumb. It was so dumb. Then you had the quote unquote Calgary come at the end after everything was done. The fight was over. Like, what was the point of them showing up? What was the point? And they weren't in no part of the film. At no point did they set this up. And they did it anyway. Oh man, this was a frustrating watch. Frustrating. And it had the audacity, the nerve even, to set up a part 3. Yes, they set up what? Man, stop while you're ahead. Please, Zach. Stop while you're ahead. Do something else. Just do something else. I still have hope in you, still have faith in you. Do something else, my brother, because this ain't it. This ain't it. You gave it a shot. Now I understand why Lucasfilm and Disney said thanks, but no thanks. Rebel Moon Part 2, The Scargiver, which gave me a scar across my heart for disappointment, gets a letter grade of a D+. Yeah, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. The only thing saved it from the F was the cinematography and the special effects. The CGI in this film was beautiful. The cinematography, top notch. Style over substance in its purest form, should I say. But hey, maybe it's just me. Maybe I'm just tripping. I would love to know what you thought of Rebel Moon Part 2, The Scargiver. Do you think it's better than the first one? More superior than the first one? I don't know what I'm talking about. Please let me know. And when you let me know, don't just say, oh, you stupid, Kevin. Peace out, and sin. No, I need you to go into depth, go into detail why this movie is good. Because please help me, please. Email the show, kbradiopodcast@gmail.com. You can also search for this show on all social media platforms. Just search for the KB Radio Network. Also subscribe to the KB Radio Network channel on YouTube. Like this video if you don't mind. Also 5 stars, reviews, and sharing this show if you're listening on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeartRadio, wherever you are currently listening to the concession stand here on the KB Radio Network. Everybody, thank you for joining me for this review of Netflix new epic space opera Seven Samurai ripoff Rebel Moon Part 2, The Scargiver. Can't wait to speak to you all on the next go around. Want you all to know that I love you, continue to love everyone, and until we speak again, you all be blessed.